So if you take that stroller brigade, again, high recency, they came yesterday, high frequency, they're coming 3 or 4 times a week, but low monetary spend. So what you could do is then you could say, hey, here's a surprise and delight. So here's a kids eat free lunch for the next time, right? Because we know it's a family membership and we know they're coming in the morning and they're most likely leaving for lunch. If you can get them to extend for lunch, maybe now once a week, the kids are begging to stay for lunch at the zoo.
You're listening to Signal, the podcast for attraction leaders shaping the future of guest experiences. This is Signal.
Today, we're joined by TJ Christensen, CEO and founding partner of BlueGator Consulting and one of the sharpest minds in our industry when it comes to bridging operations and technology. With 30 years in the industry, from Disney parking lots to executive leadership at Accesso, TJ has seen firsthand how attractions struggle to activate the mountain of data that they collect. Now, through BlueGator, he's helping theme parks, zoos, and museums make sense of that ocean of guest data, turning it into meaningful, actionable insights. His latest obsession, taking the same framework McDonald's uses to get you to buy that Egg McMuffin and applying it to how attractions think about guest engagement. He calls it from French fries to fundraising. And it might just be the mental model operators need to finally turn their data into action. Welcome to Signal, TJ.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So why don't we just jump in? You've had one of the most eclectic careers in this space, from Disney, Wyndham, Accesso, and now BlueGator. Tell us a little bit more about your journey. How did you get from parking cars at Disney to building a Salesforce consulting firm for attractions?
By accident is the short answer. So I did the Disney college program when I was in college. So I was an undergrad at University of Delaware and saw a flyer to do the Disney college program. And I was like, a semester away in Florida sounds awesome. I'll go do that. And that's where I went and parked cars at Disney's Hollywood Studios back in the day. And then upon graduating, it was right after 9/11 and the job market was really bad. And I sort of joke around that I'd finished an all-day set of interviews with Dade Paper Company. So I could have been like Jim Halpert, because it was in a paper company office above Philly. So like not quite Scranton, but about an hour north of Philadelphia. And I got a call to come back down to Disney and work in the sales and marketing division. So I jumped on that job, moved back down to Disney, thought it was going to be 6 months and then I'd be back up north, and ended up spending, over a decade in Orlando working for Disney, Wyndham, and Accesso, and just sort of like stumbled forward from one thing to the next. So at Disney, I was working with timeshare resorts, and that's how I ended up at timeshare. Then 2008, the market crashed and our department got laid off at Wyndham, and I had no background in technology. And a buddy of mine was working at Accesso at the time, and they had just come through a bankruptcy and rebranded as Accesso. And they're like, hey, I talked to C. Brown and he's like, hey, we survived bankruptcy. We're going to think about, growing a little bit. Would you like to come? So I joined there, and it was right at the intersection when I was doing my MBA. So I could take all of the stuff that I was learning from a brand and business perspective and apply it at Accesso, and got to ride that growth train for about 10 years and learned a ton there. So, got to learn from some amazing minds in the industry, both at Accesso and outside, and just working with, brands like Merlin and SeaWorld and, Columbus Zoo is a big client of ours. Six Flags is a big client of ours, Cedar Fair, just working with all sorts of folks around the world on all sorts of fun things. That's where I really sort of saw the intersection of how technology can power guest experience. And, one of the acquisitions Accesso made along the way was a company called the Experience Engine that powers a Carnival Medallion program on Princess Cruise Lines. It also powers some mobile apps in different parts of our industry. Their big thing was like, if you know who someone is and where someone is and when someone is, you can deliver them a pretty amazing what. And that's really hard to do. It's hard to do it when you have enough resources at the enterprise level. But if you're a single site operator, it's really difficult to do. One, because you don't really know how to pull everything together. Two, the task just seems too big because of that, and the siloed data and how do you solve it, and it feels like it's too far out there. And after leaving Accesso, I found myself in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I started going on Trailhead and learning Salesforce. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you pull in this point of sale data into Salesforce, into a CRM and you can deduplicate it, you have an engine that you can then start taking action on. You know who someone is, where someone is, when someone is, and you can send them a message. And so that's what we've set out to do at BlueGator, and have an opportunity to work with some really great clients over the last 6 years. So it's been a fun ride.
TJ, you mentioned this idea from French fries to fundraising, where you compare people buy coffee at McDonald's to guests at a theme park.
Yeah.
For everyone out there who hasn't heard it, what's the idea of that?
Yeah. So the idea of from French fries to fundraising is for clickbait. No. So, RFM is a strategy. It's a marketing strategy that is employed by a lot of large brands, McDonald's being one of them, Starbucks being another. Lots of brands use it. And RFM stands for recency, frequency, and monetary. So the best way to describe it is the McDonald's example. So if I go to McDonald's every day and buy a cup of coffee, and that's all I get, on my way to work, I stop in through the drive-thru, I grab a cup of coffee and I go. My recency was this morning, right? That's how recently I was there. My frequency is 5 days a week on average, because I'm going every day on my way there. And my monetary is my spend. So my spend per visit, or per cap in our industry, is probably, I don't know what a cup of coffee at McDonald's is, $3, something like that. So they look at me and they say, okay, and they score it on a rubric of quintiles, right? So 1 to 5. Recency, I'd have a high recency, probably like a 5 because I was there today. My frequency is probably a 5 because I go 5 days a week. But my monetary spend is probably like a 2, right? So my RFM score is a 552. And that puts me in some sort of category like loyalist low spender. I don't know what they call it, but you can just sort of get your head around that. So they say, okay, how do we take this collection of loyalist low spenders and get them to start spending more? How do we ladder them up from a per cap perspective, right? So that's where you start seeing these loyalty programs come in, where now I get a coupon. So next time I come to McDonald's, I get a free Egg McMuffin or half off an Egg McMuffin or something like that. So the next time I come, I do that. Maybe I have such a good experience. Now every third visit, I'm grabbing an Egg McMuffin or a hash brown with my coffee, and they've just laddered up my spend a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, you might have folks that are like that. You might have folks that come once a week with their families for breakfast on like Saturday or Sunday mornings. They have a little bit lower recency because they came last Sunday. They have a little bit lower frequency. They come once a week, but they have a lot higher spend. So how do we turn that family person into a daily coffee person? So, right, I'm trying to increase their frequency. Maybe it's a low monetary spend to start, but I'm increasing their frequency of visit. And you have a category of those folks that you then take action and message to, or, on and on. So in our industry, you might have, if you look at season pass holders, you might have one of the cohorts that I always like to use is the stroller brigade at like zoos and places like that. You could look at a cohort of members that turn up when the gate opens at 8:00, right? They're a family membership because they're scanning their family membership. They arrive 8:00 and they're out of the venue by 10:30, but they're not spending anything. And they come 3, 4, maybe 5 days a week, right? They come with all their friends. My wife was one of these. They go walk around. They talk about all sorts of stuff with the kids. The kids have stuff to do, and then they leave and they head home for lunch. So if you take that stroller brigade, again, high recency, they came yesterday, high frequency, they're coming 3 or 4 times a week, but low monetary spend. So what you could do is then you could say, hey, here's a surprise and delight. So here's a kids eat free lunch for the next time, right? Because we know it's a family membership and we know they're coming in the morning and they're most likely leaving for lunch. If you can get them to extend for lunch, maybe now once a week, the kids are begging to stay for lunch at the zoo or the aquarium or wherever you're at, right? So again, same sort of methodology for like McDonald's that you could use for a venue. And then you could extend that. And I use fundraising because of the alliteration. We work with a lot of nonprofits, but same thing with fundraising, right? Do you have people they give $5 a month? You may have people that show up once a year at the gala and cut a really big check. How do you think about engagement of those different donor bases in a way that's more actionable? And what I like about RFM is it takes all the data that you have, scores it, and puts everyone into buckets that you can get your head around, right? I can get my head around a loyalist low spender and ideate on how I ladder them up from a per cap perspective. I can get my head around the stroller brigade and try and getting them to stay for lunch. I can get my head around someone that bought a daily ticket online and did a $5 donation that maybe I want to maybe get to adopt an animal or something like that at checkout. So by being able to score it that way, you can get the teams that are often strapped for resources and time, gives them a tool set to then use and start taking action.
Fascinating conversation. Let me start there. It's fascinating because I think other industries around us have spent a lot of time and money and resource to do this kind of thing, like adding personalization on the retail side, like McDonald's level food and beverage. I mean, these are really smart people who have spent exorbitant amounts of time and money to really dig in and understand this. And in some senses, it's become a mathematical formula that they're running. And as long as they have the appropriate inputs, they're able to get the appropriate outputs. This industry that we're in and we know and love isn't quite that mature yet. What's the path? What do you see as the path?
So I think the first thing is, when so Eric Petruzik's my co-founder at BlueGator. We spent a lot of time at Accesso together working on hard problems. And, when we first got into Salesforce, we got really excited about the analytic tools. And we're like, oh, there's all these predictive analytics and these sorts of things that we could do. And actually, we started working with folks and they're like, yeah, our data's a mess. We can't get it together. It's all siloed. So the very first thing, and what we're seeing now is a lot of organizations are making collective effort to centralize their data, whether it's a data warehousing project or they're moving off of siloed data and using Salesforce as an aggregator for a true CRM. And just to speak to that a second, one of the things that I think a lot of people in our industry think about, they're like, well, we have a CRM. Our ticketing system is our CRM. And I think that's a terrible way to think about ticketing. Ticketing is meant for issuing entitlements, processing transactions, and getting people in the gate. It's not for identity resolution. It doesn't do a great, like some ticketing systems have varying degrees of analytic capabilities and stuff like that, but they're not CRMs. What we've seen is when we're coming behind other folks in our space that have done integrations, they're like, well, the ticketing system's terrible because it does this, this, and this. We're like, well, that's not what the ticketing system's supposed to do. You can solve the identity problem in Salesforce and not have to worry about the ticketing system. It can do what it does. And then that gives you the power to level up. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are setting that foundation. There are a few venues that are 5-6 years into it that have a really good base of this, and they're starting to cook with gas a little bit. But there are more venues that are just now kind of coming to see that, like, oh, okay, you can get good results with this sort of approach, and you can set a foundation that you can start building on and not feel like you're locked into a rigid platform or something like that. So we're starting to see a lot of folks that have made that choice. They've set the foundation, they've taken a breath, and now they're like, all right, we know what we got now, and we've got a better sense of our data. Now, how do we start taking action on it? And then that's where, we either along from the beginning to the foundation and now moving forward, or, there's other organizations that we're working with where they've had that foundation set and now they kind of have they've seen what we're doing in the space or talking about in the space. They're like, we want to go do that thing. Can you help us with that? So I think more people, more attention is coming to it because the data is coming together in a more intentional way across the industry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've done the last 2 or 3 years of trade shows when I've gone and I've done talks. A lot of them have been about data. And what's always fascinating is you've got an audience of people that, usually those draw a pretty big audience because everybody recognizes that data is something that they really need to be actually aware of. And it's more than just collected data. It's useful data. It's not just data at rest. And I drew this analogy probably 1.5 years or 2 years ago now. I said, in the same way that you hire a marketing consultant or a marketing person to manage your website and your outside, spend and so forth and so on, you need to start considering having a data person on your staff that can start really helping you dig to the bottom of some of these things. And some of our customers have now gone off and done that and started to hire data analysts. How do you approach that? I mean, obviously, you run a company that does this for people, and feel free to jump in with a shameless pitch. That's totally fine. But how do you suggest that larger operations and smaller operations would approach this?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our industry in general, some folks get a little bit scared of Salesforce because they see the commercials or they've had bad experiences with it in other companies or platforms or things like that. And it has a perception of being expensive, and it's certainly not cheap. When you do the ROI on what you can unlock with it, it can be a real revenue generator for you. Like, a way to, not necessarily put $1 in and get $3 out, but certainly, there's a positive ROI in these projects. And I think finding someone that can help you, it's not just a lift and shift of data for data's sake. It's really about empowering some of these things. I think that's one. I think two is what gets us excited about, the Salesforce ecosystem is they've had a CDP for a long time, but they're re-architecting all these different solutions to have data cloud is their back end sort of piece that, a couple of years ago is like where you'd migrate all your data. Now it's all zero copies. So you don't have to move your data anymore. You can access the Snowflake instance, or you can access Azure, or they opened up like at Dreamforce a couple of weeks ago, they announced 140 other connectors, including SQL databases. So being able to envelop that data and not have to move it, and then bring it into an environment that you can start, manipulating it and using it and taking action on it. From an analytics perspective, they acquired Tableau several years ago. They have now a semantic data layer that you can put over it. So when you think about, turning AI on top of your ticketing system to be able to really interact with it on like what are top sellers and things like that, it's still a little bit out there, but those things are coming fast and quick. So if you choose the right platforms, like you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of other organizations, and you can outperform some of the biggest players in the market if you make really wise sort of tech stack decisions and make really wise people decisions. And I know that's no secret. Like it's just like operations. Like in our industry, everyone focused on operations, and rightly so. And everyone's a fantastic operator, right?
Yep.
World-class operators, not world-class data people. But what we're seeing is that happening now. That's coming more and more into the industry. They're attracting that kind of stuff because the model's changing too as well, right? So like the model used to be, hey, we need to drive, we want to take admissions. It was not as simple as this, but it's like, we got to increase attendance. Let's go put in a big ride. We'll take the attendance, we'll take the ticket price up 5-10%. We'll get a bump in attendance, and voila, we'll hit our number. Mm-hmm. Our time is much more competitive than it used to be. You can sit on your couch and stream a bazillion things, or go do a bazillion things. And that trip to the local theme park or FEC or zoo, it's a much more competitive time landscape that's shifting. And you've got to be smarter with your data, and people just expect it. They expect like just better communication.
Yeah.
More robust, like they just to be known. Yeah.
Well, I mean, consumers, this struck me a year or two ago, that the consumers that are buying on Amazon are the same consumers that are buying at the zoo.
100%, yeah.
Expect a certain type of interaction. And as an industry, we've been unable to really respond to that yet technologically. We're getting there. We're doing kind of these one-offs here and there with companies like yours, but it's been really challenging. And I think that over the next decade, we've got a lot of work to do to really catch up to some of those ancillary markets.
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is, we're not Amazon, right? Like
right.
The frequency of purchase isn't enough to warrant necessarily remembering my username and login, right? So, and even if I have a username or login, I've been a member somewhere for 5-10 years, I use it once a year to renew my membership, right? So like even that gating is like kind of silly when you think about it. Like it should be more like a magic link of like, hey, renew your membership. Then it sends you that magic link that logs you into your profile that like no one's remembering their stuff. And then member ID, I got to fumble with my card. And if I don't do digital cards, I mean, it's just like, so yes.
Yeah. Agreed. Tim, go ahead. I've been taking all the questions on my own.
No, you're fine. I'm just engaged in listening. No, I was going to actually one up you on the Amazon customers or your customers because they buy on Amazon. They're probably buying Amazon at the zoo. Right.
Yeah,
they're buying on Amazon at the zoo while they're there. TJ, we talked about like a lot of larger concepts, and I know that some of this can be, I don't want to say a little scary, but unapproachable to smaller parks. So let's consider you're a smaller attraction. You don't have a data team. You're interested in RFM. What would a good first 30-day experiment look like?
Yeah. So if you were a smaller attraction, say you're doing 150,000 in attendance, I would say that's probably, on the smaller end of the ecosystem. With Salesforce, what's nice, especially if you're a nonprofit, so Salesforce has a nonprofit cloud, and inside nonprofit cloud, it has RFM capabilities. So you literally can go in and click through the interface and point it to the data that you want it to analyze. It's built for fundraising, but you could point it to membership records or things like that. And it has a data processing engine in it that does this for you and will segment people on a daily basis. It will run and it will give you the segment. You have to decide what you want to do with the segments, and you have to name the segments and how many segments do you want? Do you want 7? Do you want 5? But honestly, if you're looking to get started with it and just trying to wrap your head around it, and you've got like a ChatGPT license or something like that, like just start firing away, because like I don't want to go down too far down the AI path, but like it's a great ideation partner of like, hey, I heard this podcast about RFM. I'm a science center or I'm a local amusement park in, XYZ. And, it sounds interesting. How can I implement it? Like, how would I use like what McDonald's uses? Like literally that could be your prompt. And then you're just like iterating on it. Like, oh, well, how would I do this? And what about that? And, you can get pretty far pretty fast on like, at least how you could then take action on it, right? The hard problem to solve after that is like, okay, is your foundation set, is your data pulled together? Do you have tools to be able to score these things or apply scores to things manually? Because instead of dynamically splitting it up in quintile, you could just say like, if they visited in the last week, they're a 5. Outside of 2 weeks to a month is a 4, and so on and so forth. And then run automations on that to automatically score stuff. But you could get started. I mean, it's not like I don't want to say it's like a super easy lift unless you have nonprofit cloud already. But it's certainly something that you could start ideating on and thinking like, okay, if we implement this, like how could we prove out the ROI? Again, you could use ChatGPT for that. Like, hey, so if I did this, I was able to action on these things. What do I think my conversion rate could be on sending a targeted program to these different segments, and help me build a model to prove out ROI against RFM for my venue? You can start iterating with AI, and it will help you think through those things. You don't have to go get a consultant to go tell you all those things. We can get you 70% there. Just kind of like, all right, is this worth exploring for my venue or not?
So what would you say to an attraction that says, my gut is telling me that more than half of our customers only come once a year, right? Does that blow RFM out of the water?
No, I think that gives you a good starting spot, right? Like if over half your folks are coming once a year, you need to dial in to frequency, right? So your frequency is 1 on an annualized basis. How do I think about activating those users and stepping outside of RFM? We've done or seen this in CRMs too, where you know where your venue is, you know where their zip code is because they had to enter that in when they bought their ticket, and you can do math, right, as the crow flies, based on 55 miles an hour. Are they within 30 minutes, an hour, 5 hour, whatever? And then we work with a lot of zoos and aquariums, and a lot of zoos are gearing up for like holiday lights, right? So you could say, okay, hey, Tuesday holiday lights are looking soft, right? How do we activate that without cannibalizing future sales? Well, with your CRM, you could say, okay, I'm going to get a list of everyone that's bought zoo light tickets already that are for a different date. And then I'm going to take the people that are in 30 minutes and I'm going to run a flash sale for today, for next Tuesday. That's only people in minutes that have already bought. So I'm trying to increase the frequency of the visit, and I've targeted to people that are more than likely going to be able to take advantage of it, like in a short time frame. So, that's not necessarily RFM, but that's looking at the CRM data to be able to like analyze that stuff and take action on it near term. Tim, to your question, like, okay, they come once a year. Okay, well, how do we get them to come back? You've got to give them an incentive to come back.
Well, I think that's what all operators want. Like they're trying to get that return visit, right? Like that talked about that for years within the industry is how do you get these people to come back? And we've done bounce backs and all kinds of other things, but they haven't been really targeted to the level of what RFM would do, right? Like you just kind of give it to everyone.
Yeah, well, there's that, but then also like it's not a silver bullet either. Like, if people are only coming once a year, maybe you have a guest services problem, right? It's a multi-thread issue. Like if you're doing surveys, exit surveys, right? Collectively work with an organization that does this. When someone leaves and they do a survey, when it's like under a 4 and that comes back, it creates and they can follow up with that guest. And that's a great way to build loyalty is the recovery. Josh Liebman of the Liebman Group does this all the time. He's got a great story about like how to turn those dissatisfied guests into loyal patrons or guests or members or season pass holders. It's about the recovery aspect of it and the speed of that and all those things. So some of it is just, guest service operations. Some of it is analyzing that data to figure out why people are having such a good time, trying to get them to come back. Some of it is just giving an incentive, like a good offer, things like that.
I mean, that's only one metric too, right? Like you're looking and go, I want a return visitor. Is that possible? We have some customers and vendors that are bucket list items, right? Like you're going to go to that once. You're going to go see that once. But how do you increase the other categories and spend? Like, how do you get them to spend more money at, like, if they're going to go once, they probably are going to want to buy a memento of some sort of having been. And how do you ensure that they have what they want to buy and those kinds of things as well? There's this great story someone told me years ago about a zoo where they had gone to the zoo with their son, and he was 16, and taken a picture at the zoo. 5 years later, and periodically through that 5 years, he'd gotten, emails saying, you want to buy this picture of you and your son. And it was like $30. And he's like, no. And finally, they sent an email that said, we're going to delete this off of our servers next month, $5, and it's yours. And 5 years later, he bought it for $5, and they got $5 of revenue. Yep. And they did it because they knew exactly what the event was. They knew that it was important in their lives, and they were able to continue re-engaging because of the data that they had. I always thought that was a great story, because it's like, it's not just as people are on the ground at your attraction that those kind of opportunities arise. They arise all across that customer journey.
Yeah, and there's like, I love the Pittsburgh Zoo, but like, I can't imagine their e-commerce, not ticketing e-commerce, but like the retail e-commerce is like that great. Like, I would never go to the e-commerce store there to buy that. But for iconic attractions, certainly there's a drive there for that. And I think the other thing too is, I think about we had an experience where we had an opportunity as a family to go to the UK for spring break, and one of my bucket list items was I wanted to go to an EPL game. Like, I've never been to one, wanted to go to one. Well, the best way to go to one is you have to become a member, and then you got to do all sorts of other things, like wake up really early and be there for the member tickets and all that kind of stuff. But our whole family had to be members, and it was like $30 or something like that, right? But our kids were rest of the world members, right? And they sent them a branded box with a boot bag for your cleats, gloves, so if you're playing soccer outside, and a scarf and a card. And our kid, that was 3 or 4 years ago, our kids still have it in their rooms up on the shelf because it's so cool. And the scarves are hanging in their rooms. And, we may never go back there again, right? But we'll forever be tethered to that, and think about the brand affinity. And if you think about, zoos and things like that where you may only visit the Columbus Zoo once every 2 years or something like that, because it's far enough away from where I'm at that I'm not going to go all the time. Like 3-hour drive, but I might have a strong enough affinity where I want to be a virtual member or something. And, you adopt an animal, you get a plushie, or you can extend with commerce that relationship or that membership, or you get, videos or, access to things and stuff like that. You can experiment with that a little bit. You can do a lot of things digitally to sort of extend the relationship with your audiences. Just to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on that, I was at AZA. I think it was Edmonton Zoo was talking about what they're doing with Twitch. They had like a red panda that was born, and they started putting videos of it on Twitch and leaned way into it. They were able to generate $60,000 in donations that year off of Twitch, and all the enrichment things that they wanted to get for the panda. Like in Twitch, you can do sort of like an Amazon wish list. Every time they put something up there, someone automatically bought it. And there were people all over the world buying this thing, right? Because think about that, because they were introducing it to the animals. I live in Pittsburgh. It's the Edmonton Zoo. For some reason, I stumble on this thing and I see it. And I'm like, oh, you can buy this enrichment toy for the panda. Let's buy it. And then they're going to live stream giving that thing. Like, imagine you have your family, like, hey, that's the toy we bought, whatever the name of the panda is. And they're showing it. Like, it's just amazing the way that you can extend your brand outside of the 4 walls of, its physical space these days.
Yeah, it is amazing. The level of connectivity behind that is incredible. And of course, we're building on we're kind of building on the shoulders of giants, because there's other industries that have really built that whole ecosystem and the technologies around being able to do that. And then they were able to leverage that in their space to a high level of effectiveness. This might be a silly question, given what we just talked about, but if you had to pick one and say, I'm going to concentrate on one on the RFM, recency, frequency, and monetary, as a small attraction or as an operator, where would you start?
Well, I wouldn't start at one, because you take the collection of each one and
exactly.
Segment. Like, as Tim pointed out, it depends on my visitation at patterns, right? So like the monetary is probably about the same, or it's probably scales, right? The more spend, the more monetary. So I'd probably focus on frequency. So how do I increase the frequency of visits and drive more, clicks through the turnstile, and try and dial that in for sure. On the frequency side, there's the daily ticket side, but there's also the membership or season pass side. I would look at people that do have passes and have been inactive or dormant over a certain period of time, and I'd look to activate them so I could make sure that I'm retaining them as members year over year. So, the closer to their out, I mean, I don't know the data on this. I would have to look at it, but like, I would imagine the closer the last visit is to the, expiration within reason, right? Probably too close, you might not renew. There's probably some sweet spot on there on like, hey, maybe 3 months out from expiration, you want that person to come because you're going to be in the back of their mind that, oh, we were just there, we need to go back anyways, and let's renew, sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of attraction operators over the years have fixated really heavily on the monetary side and gone, we need to increase revenue, or we need to do these kinds of things, and almost at the exclusion of the other two. But I recognize that they all work together, and they only really work together from that perspective.
The industry in general has focused on revenue, but coming out of COVID, you started to focus on not shoving people through an attraction, right? You get fewer people at a higher ticket ring, and they ultimately get a better experience. So I think there's some other factors outside of that. But when you do get into that space, you have fewer people or fewer guests in general. The RFM becomes important with that, right? So TJ, I know we've talked, and you said that you haven't really had anyone fully bite on this yet, but you're passionate about it. You've talked about it. You won't shut up about it. But anyways, what resistance are you hearing like from operators?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's resisting it. We have a couple folks that are, again, they've set the foundation. They have the right tools in place. That tool being Salesforce and Nonprofit Cloud. It's stuff that they can now start looking at and as a second phase. So we do have some folks that are starting to look at it. For folks that don't have that tool in it, we're looking at, hey, can we build a light application that can work in conjunction with Salesforce data within Salesforce to be able to like do these calculations and stuff like that. So you already have the tools, great. If not, we're looking at investing in those tools so that we can bring this to market in the near term. Yeah, I mean, I think the hesitancy is just more about getting their arms around it. Like, it's amazing the hesitation folks have. We'll talk a lot about like, hey, when you connect ticketing with Salesforce and marketing, you can do things as simple as soon as someone visits, within 24 hours, send them an automated email to become a member or season pass holder, right? People are like, yeah, I want that. But then you go to actually implement those automated journeys and like, are we sure it's going to work? Are we sure it's going to fire? Send to the wrong person, and all these doubt and all the and some of them are good questions to ask, but people get nervous. It's like are you a person that's going to jump in a Waymo and be comfortable with the thing just driving itself, or you still feel like you want to have someone have their hands on the wheel? And building those automated tools, people can be resistant, not resistant, but just reluctant. Because I was talking to someone the other day, and I'm like, hey, look, today you're taking the data, you're exporting the data, you're reviewing the data, you're importing the data, then you're exporting the data from over here, you're reviewing the data, and you're importing the data. It's eating up all your time. You don't like that, right? We can all agree. But in tomorrow's world, where all that's happening automated, you're going to have a hard time trusting that it's actually doing it because you were touching it so many times. So it's that like trust the technology, what the technology is supposed to be doing. And so it's very few folks are jumping in and like, yeah, full foot on the throttle or whatever, and let's go. It's more like, okay, like let's try this over here and let's try this over here and this over here, versus like all in.
I don't know if you were intentionally doing this or not, but you mentioned data so much in your response to that question that you have segued us into the next part of the conversation.
Sweet.
Right. Which is taming data chaos so that RFM is even possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is more of a statement than a question, and then I'll get to the question part. But I mean, there's this old phrase that drowning in data, but starving for insights, right? That we're really in that. And I mean, we're in good hands. Other industries have gone through this as well, and we don't have to step through all the same hoops. We have things that have been built for us now as an industry, like whether it's Salesforce or other tools that now exist. We're not reinventing the wheel. When you look at a typical attractions tech stack, what's usually broken, and what do you usually have to assess first?
It's not that anything's broken. It's that it's all siloed and disconnected. If you look at like a zoo or aquarium or museum, a nonprofit, they're more complicated, much more complicated an operation than, a regional theme park or something like that, right? They have They have a donor system that's siloed, either intentionally or unintentionally, on-prem, sort of razor's edge type solution. They have ticketing that's siloed, not connected. They have marketing that's siloed and not connected. And they're wrestling with imports and exports across all these systems to try and do stuff. And it's not that any one of those systems are broken. On their own, they work just fine for the most part, right? And where they start to integrate these things, they end up doing it with these brittle point-to-point connections that if one system upgrades, everything downstream is impacted. The first thing is, again, that's why we like Salesforce as a platform, because you can plug in a ticketing system and ticketing data comes in a certain way, and you move your fundraising, so you got all your fundraising data in there, and then it's interact. If I want to use this online giving tool, great, or switch it out for another online giving tool, and my platform is the same, and the data model doesn't shift much, and I'm able to integrate data in and pull data out in a really easy way in that platform. So that's what we're trying to solve with the Salesforce stuff. But going back to your question, what's broken is, it's not that anything's broken. It's just too brittle an environment, because they used to all, 10 years ago, it was fine when everyone was in a silo. Now they want to pull everything together. It's really difficult because everything's in a silo.
Yeah. And I mean, our industry has not been good at integration friendliness. Over the last 10 years, it's gotten a little bit better. But I remember companies like Redeem or Resd and things like that trying to say, you can use all of our channel management, you can use all of our tools, but we really need your ticketing system to do the integration, because otherwise you can't use those things. And we've ended up with data silos of our own making sometimes that exist. And I think that's starting to break down now as well. And we're starting to see more and more people go, okay, integration's good for all of us to the betterment of all platforms. But I think that has certainly taken place in the industry.
Yeah, yes, to that. So it's really interesting. I feel like ticketing systems in general, or a lot of systems in general, think very much about like, I'm going to keep it here because the tighter I can keep you, the tighter I can keep you. And that's actually what is forcing clients to make a choice to move, right? So the more open your platform can be, and this is what like I think Salesforce has done, like moving into that industry and seeing that ecosystem, everything's open. You want to use their stuff, great. You want to build your own stuff, great. You want to use some other tool that's integrated, great. Whatever you want to do is fine. It's open, it's a platform, go for it, right? And when you think about that from a ticketing perspective, being able to have clients build their own services on top of it, or integrate other services, or use the services that you have, having that open architecture and the ability to support those things and those needs as they evolve, I think that's going to be the winning play. And it allows the whole industry to move forward in a way that's really exciting, because they're not like dragging,
debt effectively.
a tech debt. And some of it is really hard, because it doesn't matter what your platform was. If you built your platform 10 years ago, or you built it 15 years ago, like the tech is moving so fast that sometimes it's a big lift to bring those things up. There's a volunteer system in the space that like they just can't integrate stuff. All they can do is give you a CSV, probably because it's like spaghetti code, and it's too hard to do that.
TJ, we've talked before. You mentioned the need for having different RFMs, like for different segmentation within an org, but can you have too many?
Probably. Like I wouldn't go crazy with it, right? Like, again, if you're a nonprofit, RFM for fundraising makes a lot of sense, because you're trying to move donors in a different way than you're trying to move day visitors or members or something like that, right? So I would think about it RFM for fundraising and probably RFM for visitation, or maybe just RFM for members, because there's enough of, especially if you've got a really strong membership base, just there's enough there to try and get that incremental visit out of the member. Like with a lot of organizations, if you can increase your membership retention by like every percentage point that you maintain year over year, is like, it could be like $100,000 or more that you don't have to go get next year, right? So that might be a place to just start, because then if your retention's higher, and there's a cap to that, you're never going to retain 100% of your members, but if you start hitting that cap and you're doing everything you can on that, then you can shift to the next one on visitation. And visitation could be tricky if you're more of a touristy type attraction where people are coming into town and you're like that place that you go when you come to the city, then it's probably a little bit trickier. You might want to focus more on your captive audience, which would be like members and donors.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're an attraction, you're kind of a mid-sized attraction. you have your typical silos, you have your ticketing, your separate retail system, your separate food and beverage system, you have a membership system that's kind of got a janky hookup to some sort of donor management system because, there's some of that going on as well. And you've never thought about the data of this. What is the first step that you would walk in the door and say, okay, here it is. This is the first thing I want you to think about.
It's a little scary of
I know, I gave you a good setup, right?
like the first thing would be like, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Because there are organizations that, I'll use this analogy because it's fun and to me it's relevant. So my son played his first year of tackle football, like Pee Wee football this year, right? And there are kids that don't want to play tackle football and they don't play football. There are kids that think they want to play football, then they get there, it's hot, they're hit, they're hurt, they don't want to play football. They like the idea, but not the actual thing. But then there's kids that like it all. And it's just like change. Some people don't want any change. And if you don't want any change, then don't play the sport, but don't expect to be drafted.
Yeah.
Some people like the idea of change, but when it starts to happen, they don't like it so much.
Yeah.
And, that's where you have to look really hard at your organization. And do you have the right people in the right seats to get your organization where it needs to go? Not where it wants to go, where it needs to go. And if it doesn't need to go there, then you might be just fine with the status quo. Not everybody's got to be, drafted. But if you want to play the sport and you like to play the sport, then you got to get in the game. And that means, you got to come up with a clear why. Why do you want to do this? What is the reason for this? Because there is organizational pain in this, and you've got to have a strong enough team and reason to get through that, to get to the other side of doing all the cool stuff that we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. No pain, no gain, right? Like, and I really like your analogy. I think that's a great analogy because the reality is that, I know lots of orgs. I've spent a lot of time with different organizations over the last going on 15 years here. And you often will have someone inside the walls that's a little bit younger, maybe coming from a different segment of the market, going, guys, this is wow, my last job, this was so amazing. This is what it is. And then they get up to ownership, and ownership's like, this is our family legacy. We can't mess with this. And that's where things die on the vine.
Yeah.
And it's scary because, you really are going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, live with the pain for a while you start to move things around and really get yourself in the position you need to be in. And you really can't see what it's going to look like until you've gotten a little further down the track. So no, I love the analogy.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was sort of thinking about another point on that is like, a lot of organizations, it's where you divert your dollars. So a lot of organizations will bring in really expensive agencies to tell them, build this huge 5-year strategy plan for me, right? And you spend a lot of money and a lot of time. And I'm not saying there's not value in these things, but they'll send lots and lots of money to get this. Back in the day, you'd print it out, but it'd be like this binder, this deck of your 5-year marketing strategy or whatever it is. And then they hand it to the marketer that just graduated college. They're like, we want to do this.
Right.
Yeah. So 1, our socials aren't even set up. And 2, everything's disconnected. And 3, all these things. So you're paying for all of that stuff. And one of the things that we've talked about is when we understand enough of the strategy, we're not going to be one of those shops that comes in and helps you build like a 5-year strategy or something like that. Well, what we can do is we can make sure that your tech stack is in place to execute your strategy versus, because what they'll then do is say, well, actually, if you just give us your ticketing exports on an XYZ basis, we'll run your marketing for you and we'll do all those things. And they're charging you all that stuff. You don't need to do that. Just set up your technology to be able to enable those things in an automated fashion. And you can be in the driver's seat and you don't have to be waiting for, I wonder how this campaign went. I got to go chase, so-and-so to give me the report on what the conversion was and all this other stuff because they have all the data. Then they have all the power. Build your tech stack so you have the power and you can execute it. And it's oftentimes it's probably the same dollars. It's just you're bringing that in-house, and there's risk in bringing it in-house, right? You have, a mastermind behind all this stuff, and then they leave, and then you've got to, backfill that. But I feel like that at least you're in control of your own destiny in that manner.
Yeah, I love your passion about it. I feel equally passionate about it, and oftentimes I find, and it's becoming significantly better in the last 3 years. I find that there was a point where we were radicals. this idea that we're just radicals in the industry. That's crazy what you guys are talking about doing. We're so far behind that. We're never going to get there. And now I'm starting to feel like the tide is starting to move, and we're going to start seeing more and more attractions make this move, because it's not just interesting, it's essential.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there are so many smart people in the industry. Like there's tons of brilliant operators that are now they're seeing what's possible, and they're connecting the dots really quickly. And that's why we're starting to see the momentum behind kind of what we're doing. Is because, 5 years ago, we would shop some of this stuff around and people were like, that looks awesome. Can you actually do that? Like, is that
Right.
possible? And like, I've heard about some of those things that go terribly wrong. And like, that seems risky.
Yeah.
We've gotten lots of good reps and ups, and we talk with the Salesforce team a lot about just sort of being evangelical in the ecosystem about arts and cultural organizations using Salesforce, because the more people that are having success on this platform, the more the whole industry moves forward. It's not necessarily about, we hope we benefit from that too, but it's actually more of like being super passionate about these venues, because the why we do what we do, or why me and Eric hung the shingle, or I hung the shingle of BlueGator up, was my personal experience. You have so many key family memories at museums and zoos and theme parks and things like that. And these experiences that you're having as a kid can change the trajectory of your life. I was going to work at a paper company, right? Like I could have been like, and look where my career ended up. This is how people become world-class conservationists. This is getting exposure to these things. This is how you become a curator, a passion for art, passion for science, passion for, theme parks. I was just doing a career day and I was talking to kids about like, hey, if you love math and science, like you could go build roller coasters. That's a thing. Like, it can change the trajectory, and it's such a fun industry. And I think with what we're doing and why we're so passionate about it is we play a small part in those experiences for those guests every single day, right? We can connect what we're doing with those experiences. And I think that's something that, like, it certainly wakes me up in the morning, has me, sort of lock in at work and stuff like that, is like, we're not just here to do the thing because it's easy. It's like, we live and breathe this thing, and we know what benefits it can have for the industry and the subsequent benefits it can have for our societies and our communities and all that kind of stuff. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
It's really interesting. You find these synergies in guests that you speak with, and I definitely have a synergy with you in regards to the why.
Yeah.
The why is not because I inherently love databases.
Yeah.
Or I inherently love ticketing. Like, that is not the why. The why is because you see that 6-year-old kid light up and have a permanent memory wherever they're experienced. And I always actually say this. I say, you could have someone from different parts of the world that don't speak any of the same languages sitting on a roller coaster next to each other, experiencing the same levels of joy and the same levels of a wild abandon of having this experience. And now you've created a connection that wouldn't have otherwise existed, and that's worth doing. And I all of this is a means to an end, which is facilitating a world where those kinds of things are easier to do.
Yeah.
And more people can experience them.
Yeah. I had a coworker at Disney where her sibling was I think like a 1 or 2-star general in the military. And she was like, when she has a bad day, like, bad things are happening.
Bad things happen.
When I have a bad day, I can go to Main Street and watch people turn the corner and watch their faces light up when they first see the castle, or watch their eyes tear up and stuff like that. Like, you can connect yourself with the product really quickly in this industry. What I'm about to say, we take our job very seriously. We take the role that we play in moving data and all that stuff very seriously. But at the end of the day, no one's lives on the line. We're about helping people have a better day. And people tend to be a lot more fun to work with. So that's the other reason why we do what we do. Because like, if we were working in public sector and with the military and stuff like that, I'm sure like it's not quite as fun as,
I've got no experience in that area, so I don't know. But I suspect you're probably right.
Yeah.
Everybody I've worked with in attractions and in tour space does it because they love the vision and mission of it.
Yeah.
It's not a job. In fact, I think if it was just a job, you just wouldn't do it. Like, Tim, you got your story of how you ended up in this space, and you did it because you loved it, right? Like, it was something that just called to you. And I think that's just true. And I think that's true just as much for technologists in the space as it is for the people that are, meeting the guests in the front line.
Yeah, I think a great example of that is I think Mark Locker at attractions.io. Like you can tell he loves this stuff. Like you just LinkedIn, like he just posted something about 20th year in a row at Alton Towers at the end of year fireworks. Like that dude loves what he does. You can
Yep.
just tell.
Yeah, and you have to. I mean, that's the only reason. The only way you survive in this industry is you have to love it. You have to be just crazy enough to think this is where you want to spend your time.
On that note, I'm gonna keep us moving. So we talked about a lot of stuff, and the big topic that everyone wants to talk about is AI. And how that plays into the guest engagement and guest experience. Over the next, let's say 5 to 10 years, but I mean, over the next year, maybe. At the speed that it's moving. So we've talked a lot about museums and nonprofits, but they're different than theme parks, in general, or attractions or passenger vessels or any of those. So does RFM still work?
Well, I think the topic is different for AI. Like where I go with AI is how can I use AI to help with operational support things like call deflection support, maybe from a sales perspective, from a content perspective. Like I think that's where AI takes a place. I mean, certainly you can tune AI models to do, and you're using analytic tools to sort of segment and stuff like that. But I think the place that AI plays, we're seeing it as in a couple different pockets. So one, every venue out there has a group sales, private events, catering sort of function. And we're seeing clients experiment with or really lean into agents for SDR agents. So like Salesforce Agent Force has SDR agents so they can do the outbound. So their sellers can focus on selling. So like the example I always use is in the fall when all the teachers come back to school, everyone's reaching out to the teachers because they have their budgets and they're back in school about booking the field trip in the spring. And all the schools and all the teachers and all the stuff, and it's a million emails to send out and conversations to manage. You can now have AI do that. They can reach out to everybody in the school district or the 10 school districts in the area. It can handle the back and forth emails or questions and return things based on a knowledge base. And then if the teacher is interested and wants to book time, AI can book time on your calendar to get it closed. So you as a seller, your time is much more focused on selling versus and booking the business and trying to make more of that visit with add-ons with catering and other experiences and things like that versus like just the email chatter back and forth. So I think it's one pocket of AI. I think another pocket of AI is on the service side. So being able to have, not just a chatbot on your website, but a chatbot on your website that could also change or interact with their data inside behind the website, right? So hey, when's my membership expire? Can I extend my membership? How many benefits do I have? Where can I use these loyalty points on property? Those sorts of things you can deliver within AI and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is super cool. I think another thing, we were talking about Amazon earlier and talk about like the grocery store. So, we get our groceries, we buy them online, pick them up, bring them home, and every once in a while, like the apples are rotten or something's not good or this, that, other thing. And you message in the app and it's like, boom, it's refunded. Imagine using AI, they know your record. They know if you're a sort of frequent complainer and maybe you don't get the apples refunded right away. Or if it's your first visit, you had a stale pretzel and we can just refund you on the spot using AI, right? We know that you're a first time visitor. We know that you just had a bad experience. We can recover immediately using AI. Or we can escalate it if not, like maybe you're a constant complainer. It's like, oh, so sorry about that. Please go to this place and we'll have a guest service person. You can offload it to a person if you need to versus just like, having revenue at risk. That's a good use for AI. And you think about that on your website as well. And I think the third pocket of AI is around content generation, which let's face it, probably everybody's doing their emails already in AI and all that stuff anyways. But, if you think about the type of content that you can generate, you can go talk to your ride safety operators and do interviews with them like this and take that transcript. And then you could have a whole STEM sort of education series based on ride safety or how this thing was built or what a zookeeper does on a day in, day out basis. And you can build these repositories that they can then supercharge your messaging to be more targeted to your RFM segments, right? Because I as the writer or the marketer at the location don't have to come up with these unique ideas for the blog or for this or that. I can go out and interview people. I can store those interviews. I can plug them into AI. I can riff on that and get like, blogs or posts or all that stuff. I can just sort of rip that stuff out. And, now I've got a content engine that is never ending.
I think AI has a lot to offer insofar as the edges of communications with people, where there's a lot of make work. And to your point, like, I need to ask a quick question. Can I ask this quick question of an AI bot of some sort? And I mean, we've been doing this with phone lines for a long, long time, right? Like, you call in, get your quick answer about the weather on the ski slope, and then you can decide if you're going to go skiing that day. Then AI, of course, enables that to be a much faster experience. What do you think about the intersection between human, and we talked about this a little bit on the offline side. What do you think about the intersection between human to human connections?
Yeah, it doesn't replace that. That's the connective tissue of these experiences, right? Is experiencing these as a collective group of visitors or your family or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If I have a question about an exhibit or something like that, or I'm genuinely curious about something, having a person to interact with and learn more and go deeper is certainly better than a bot or an agent. But it's changing. I mean,
It is.
generations are changing, and you can say what you want about Gen Alpha or the other ones, but a lot of people are a little uncomfortable with person-to-person interaction and things like that. So I think there's a world where both exist, but I don't know.
Yeah, and this is where, okay, so I mean, we might strike this from the record too, but this is where I start getting like, I start questioning my role as a technologist. So is my role as a technologist to ensure that we have the best technology, or is my role as a technologist to ensure that we do things that are culturally going to be important for us? So I clearly come from a generation of Gen X. I turned 50 this year. So I definitely fit into a certain category. And I'm probably the person who, it's a 50-50 if I'm going to call in and make a ticket reservation or if I'm going to use the website, right? I probably use the website more, but I still like the human to human interaction component. Is it good? I know I look at Salesforce. Salesforce kind of was famous about this. They started to teach a lot of soft skills courses to incoming Gen Zers. I have 2 Gen Z kids myself who are in their 20s, and learning all those soft skills of how to have human to human interactions. Where's that? And this is an absolutely philosophical question, but where's that line with AI where we say part of our responsibility as technologists is not just to say, hey, you don't have to talk to anybody, but rather to drive some of those human to human interactions that are probably really important to society as a whole. And once again, we're way beyond the scope of the initial conversation, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are.
I think there's 2 ways to think about that. I think if we're thinking about it from a visitor venue engagement perspective, I think you can scale operations up using technology in a much faster, more efficient way. You can maintain a much higher level of service, or much better standard of service across, like, it'll be much more even as you go through different things.
Agreed.
And if you can layer in person-to-person interaction and engagement as part of that, I think that's a win. I think in the workplace, there's a real disservice because, I mean, we're 100% remote. We won't be a physical place ever. We're all remote employees. I think there is a disservice for people coming out of school that don't have the benefit of going into an office, and it's all the conversation that happened in between the conversations.
Yeah, the water cooler
actions, and your manager or mentor hearing you blow a call, then coming into your cube and be like, "Hey, I just heard that, so like, do this a little bit differently," or that like that. And you can have AI do that, but it doesn't have the same impact as someone that you have an actual relationship with, and that took you out to lunch and has your best interest at heart and is trying to like grow you and all, if you have a good work environment and stuff like that. I think that's a big gap of like going from entry level to above. That's going to be a tough one for a lot of younger folks coming out of college to bridge, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, what the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's a philosophical question. It was just curious as to what your thoughts.
John, when you asked that, my head went to this place. I'll condense it as much as I can, but there's this comedian, Ronnie Chang. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but he does this bit about his mom sending him a picture of Bigfoot buying kombucha at Whole Foods, and she's like, "Do you know that Bigfoot is real?" Because there's a picture of him buying kombucha at Whole Foods, and he's like, no mom, that's AI, and she goes, well, no, there's a picture of him at Whole Foods, where would this technology come that can fake pictures, and it goes through this whole bit, and he's like, no, it's fake, like it's fake, it's been manipulated, and she's like, but how do you know? And at that point he kind of like breaks down and he goes, well, the aspect ratio is wrong, the lighting is, and it's pixelated, and then he's like, I've just learned all these things from all these things on the internet over the years. This world is not made for you anymore. Right. And this is kind of the thing.
Yeah.
And the reason my head went there is, as we think about AI and these interactions and how they engage with people, we have a pretty built-in bullshit factor. And just looking at something or seeing like dashes in context, we know it came from AI now, or looking at a photo, we can usually tell. And I think as a society, that takes away the authenticity. So I think as technologists, we have to balance the authenticity with that. If we can leverage AI to give humans the tool to create those human interactions, like surfacing data or offers like you talked about, TJ, I think that's an important place.
If operators listening could do just one thing differently after hearing about RFM and your French fries to fundraising framework, what should that one thing be?
I think they should look at their tech estate and assess, is the stack that they have in place today something that can take them forward over the next 5 to 10 years or not? And if so, it's time to lean in and start really thinking about some of the segmentation and things that we've talked about. If not, you've probably got some foundational work to do first.
Right. All right. We're going to move into the lightning round. So starting off, super important question. Really, everything hinges on this. McRib or Big Mac?
Neither. I don't do fast food.
So the analogy is good with McDonald's, but it breaks down on the actual food side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will have McDonald's coffee every once in a while, but
There you go.
I don't do the Big Mac or McRib.
So drive-through or mobile order for you?
Drive through. I don't like the mobile order. Yeah. Mainly because usually when I'm doing it, I'm getting stuff for everybody else. And then it takes me too long to like this and extra that. And I'd just rather just do it.
There is an irony to that. And that also puts you in a specific age bracket as well. So,
yes, and the fact that I screw up every time.
Listen, we grew up setting our parents' VCRs. I don't, we know all about this.
But how are they going to RFM you if you don't use the app?
That's their problem. I don't know.
Yeah, but you lose out on all those points. You have free coffee.
I do. I know.
See, and
but my wife gets them all. So
yeah,
she's the collector of all things points.
Yes, I can definitely agree with that. And she does all the online ordering as well, right? She probably mobile orders.
She's got them all saved. I don't.
Yeah, I know.
I don't do it enough to save. So like, she's just like, oh, click. They're like, we're reordering. I'm like, that's awesome. Usually mine's like super easy. It's just like a black coffee or something like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, this is where we get to the point where we realize that our wives are what make our lives make sense, because the rest of us would be lost in this world.
And we failed the lightning round again.
Yeah, we failed. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to take your question then, Tim. We're back and forth here. Email or SMS?
Text.
Salesforce or build your own?
Salesforce. Come on.
Dynamic pricing? Yes or no?
Ooh.
Off the record?
I would abstain.
Okay.
I know venues have had really good success with it. And yes. I really like the folks at the dynamic pricing companies.
Yes.
So I'm not disparaging their products or anything like that. I'm just, if you do variable pricing, can you get the same lift? Do you need it to be that?
Yeah, that
involved? Like, right? If I do a $10 swing weekday to weekend and I do that season by season, can I get the same lift and the same visitation? I don't know. The folks at Disney would tell you, you can.
Yeah. I mean, the folks at Disney also just doubled their pricing on memberships and then said the darndest quote, which was, we still haven't been able to determine what our upward bound is on pricing. They have a certain kind of market that they're in there.
Yeah, it's unreal.
AI revolution or evolution?
Evolution.
I would agree with that. Biggest data sin in one word. That's tough.
Ignoring
it? Yeah.
Loyalty programs, essential or optional?
Optional.
Best metric nobody tracks.
Average visitation per member.
A percentage of attractions using data well.
Less than 10.
Project killer, budget or politics. Present clients excluded.
I don't know. Usually it's budget.
One tool everyone needs?
Salesforce.
Wait, are you getting, I don't see any Salesforce mug behind you. Are you getting paid by Salesforce to say that?
Indirectly, yes.
Yeah, it's okay. Good to know. RFM adoption by 2030 in our industry, over or under 50%?
I'd say under 50%, but close.
Season passes, blessing or a curse?
Blessing.
Worst vendor buzzword?
Worst vendor buzzword?
AI.
Cloud.
Yeah, man. I don't know, synergy or
guest focus.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the things I've written and every time I write it, I cringe. There's a ton of them.
There are a ton of them.
Guest engagement, like, probably guest engagement. I am probably at the top of the list of people that overuses that.
One segment everyone ignores.
You do a callback to the stroller brigade.
So if McDonald's ran a theme park, what would they do better than anyone else?
I mean, the quick service. I mean, they would crush that.
I tell you, they have the best kiosks in the world. Like,
yeah, the kiosks are pretty slick. Yeah,
incredible kiosks.
Yeah. I shouldn't say I don't have a habit of eating. Like, I can't remember the last time I had a Big Mac or a McRib. Like, it's been decades.
I can't either.
Yeah, their kiosks are slick. They would own all the real estate. They'd be great at the real estate because that's their game, anyways.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. This has been a fantastic conversation. And we really enjoyed our time here, TJ. Talking about RFM as an unblocker and a new way of thinking based upon different industries' kind of thought processes, and how we can apply that into our industry. How we can ladder people up from low per cap spend to higher value segments, and really kind of work them through that quintile of where do they fit in that. I don't think a lot of attractions think that way. I think that the ones that do are super ahead of their time, so to speak, which is great. Someone needs to lead that pack. This has been great. Anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off for today?
We covered a lot of topics. If you are sort of looking to set the foundation, it can be a little bit scary, but there's lots of people that are out there forging the path. So we're happy to help. There's lots of attractions that we can point you to that we've interacted with that are further ahead than some of our clients that we've worked with, or some of our clients that are making their way there. So there are people out there that are doing it. It would be just get in the game and get started.
You're one of the forefront people on that topic out there right now, and so it's been a real pleasure. I look forward to more conversations in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
You're listening to Signal.